No one saw her, no one even remembered her name. But on that sweltering afternoon, with the sun scorching the pavement, she became the only lifeline for a man who seemed to have it all. A luxury car sat motionless on a deserted road, thick smoke curling from its engine. A powerful executive, someone used to the world bending to his will, was now fragile, stranded, not even sure where to begin asking for help. Nicholas Weber slammed his fist against the Maserati's steering wheel, his eyes flicking down to his platinum watch. 11:43. Exactly 17 minutes left before he was due to present a make-or-break project to the most important investors in America. Sweat seeped through his silk shirt. He popped the hood only to be blasted in the face by a cloud of dense smoke that sent him stumbling back. "Damn it," he muttered, loosening his tie. His $3,000 Italian suit was never meant for engine work, and he had no clue what he was doing under there. The irony was brutal. A man who commanded a business empire now rendered helpless by steel and wiring. Then came the sound of an old engine sputtering to a stop. An ancient pickup truck pulled over a few yards away. Nicholas squinted as a woman stepped out. Grease-streaked jeans, rolled-up flannel shirt, tightly tied curly hair. Her dark skin glistened under the unforgiving sun. "Need a hand?" she asked, striding up with calm confidence, a stark contrast to Nicholas's unraveling composure. "I've got a very important meeting in 15 minutes, he replied sharply, unable to mask his frustration. "My assistant's calling roadside assistance, but this godforsaken place has no cell service." The woman didn't flinch at his tone or his status. She didn't ask more questions. Instead, she leaned over the smoking engine like it was any other car she'd fixed 100 times before. "Cooling system," she declared after a quick glance. Her voice was steady, certain. "I can patch it. You'll make it to the city. It won't last long, but it'll buy you a few hours." Nicholas looked at her skeptically, not hiding his doubt. "You sure I'm a mechanic?" she said plainly, eyes locked on his. "My garage is 10 miles up the road." Without waiting for permission, she returned to her truck and grabbed a worn-out toolkit. Every move was efficient, no wasted motion, like every second counted. Then she got to work bare-handed on the hot metal with small, powerful hands. Her fingers moved like a surgeon's, precise and fast. 5 more minutes and you'd have fried the engine, she warned, as she adjusted something Nicholas couldn't name. "These cars are powerful, but way too delicate, like some people I've met." The jab wasn't lost on him, but Nicholas was too anxious about the meeting to take offense. "You know this much about high-end cars, and yet you're working out of—" He paused, the unfinished question dripping with bias, even he heard it. "A forgotten little town," she finished for him, staring him down. "I read, I study, I love what I do." "Excellence doesn't belong only to big cities, Mr. Weber." He froze. "How do you know my name?" "Your face is all over the business section," she said, snapping the hood shut. "You're good to go. I owe you big time." Nicholas exhaled, reaching for his wallet. "Please take this as a thank you." But just as she reached out to accept the cash, Nicholas saw it. The antique silver ring set with a small sapphire stone looked far too delicate for a woman with hands stained by engine grease. And yet Nicholas recognized it instantly. The world seemed to freeze. A memory flashed across his mind, wide, innocent eyes, a promise made beneath a leafy tree, and the last gift his mother gave him before she passed away. Where Where did you get that ring?" he asked, voice trembling under the harsh glare of the sun. The woman immediately curled her hand into a fist, instinctively hiding the ring. "It belonged to my mother," she said cautiously, eyes narrowing just slightly. Why? What she couldn't have known was this: 20 years ago, that very ring had been slipped onto the tiny finger of a little girl by a boy who promised he'd come back. That boy was now the man standing before her. The man who had forgotten the most sacred promise of his life, and now fate had brought them together again in a way no one could have predicted. Jessica squinted, catching the way Nicholas stared at the ring. She tucked the money he'd offered into her pocket, turned away, and headed back to her truck. If the car dies again, the repair shop's 10 miles ahead. First, right after the Aurora City sign. Nicholas stood frozen, torn between the biggest meeting of his career and the moment that had just unraveled everything he thought he knew. That ring, he began, but she had already started the engine. Your meeting, Mr. Weber, Jessica said coldly. The investors are waiting. The Maserati roared to life and sped off, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake. Jessica stood still, whispering to no one but herself. He didn't recognize me. Her thumb grazed the silver ring, a motion so familiar, so instinctive, she hardly noticed she was doing it. Then again, he never saw me at the Hope Orphanage. At Hope Mechanical, Jessica worked tirelessly, elbows deep in a disassembled engine, all her rage channeled into each turn of the wrench, each stubborn smear of grease. You're gonna strip the carburetor, came a deep voice behind her. It was Xavier, her gray-haired uncle, and the only person who knew the full story. He showed up, Uncle X, Jessica said, not looking up. Nicholas Weber with a broken car, like fate's idea of a joke. Xavier stiffened. The boy who promised he'd come back, now a man who remembers nothing. He looked at me like I was just another nobody under a hood. Saw the ring, but didn't see the girl who's worn it every day for 20 years. That night, Jessica pulled out a wooden box hidden under her bed. Inside were old newspaper clippings, each one carefully preserved, tracing Nicholas Weber's rise. His face appeared in articles about innovation philanthropy, even his engagement announcement with Maya Harrington, the heiress to a fashion empire. By tomorrow he'll have forgotten the ring all over again, Jessica whispered to the empty room. But Jessica was wrong. The next morning, a modest sedan pulled up outside the garage. Nicholas stepped out, no designer suit, no entourage, just a man trying not to be noticed. Garage is open, Jessica called out, keeping her distance. Actually, I came to return this, Nicholas said, holding out his hand. In his palm was a small wooden carving of a bird with its wings spread wide. Jessica froze. It was the first thing she had ever carved for him as a goodbye gift, back when they were just children. Open Heart Orphanage, Orion District, Nicholas said softly. You were the girl who taught me how to carve, when the other boys were too busy mocking me. You promised you'd come back, Jessica said quietly. I tried. His voice faltered. For years. But my father, he had other plans. From inside the garage, Xavier emerged, wiping his hands with a rag, eyes filled with quiet suspicion. Prince Charming finally returns, huh? He muttered. I get why you don't trust me, Nicholas said, facing him squarely. But I'm here to ask for a chance. A chance to explain. Xavier's the one who took me in after I left the orphanage, Jessica added. Taught me everything I know, gave me a home when no one else would. Something I should have done. Nicholas admitted, his voice heavy. Then why now, Jessica demanded, her eyes drilling into him. Nicholas took a long, steady breath. In 3 weeks, I'm set to announce my engagement to a woman I don't love, take control of a corporation I secretly despise, and complete my transformation into the man my father always wanted me to become. He paused, locking eyes with her. And then I saw you, or more precisely, I saw that ring. And something in me woke up. His phone buzzed again. Maya, 6th call in a row. She's persistent, Jessica remarked, voice laced with sarcasm. The one holding the leash, Nicholas muttered, silencing the call. This marriage is nothing more than a business deal dressed up as romance. So what do you expect from me? Jessica folded her arms. Forgiveness for the promise you tossed away. A truth, he replied quietly. And maybe a chance to make the biggest wrong of my life right. But what Nicholas hadn't shared yet was that last night he'd started a private investigation into Jessica Oliveira, her past at the orphanage, and the vanished records tied to a plot of land once owned by her family. And Jessica, in turn, was guarding an old file tucked deep within the garage, yellowing pages stamped with the Weber Enterprises logo, bearing the signature of Nicholas's father, clearly outlining the illegal seizure of land. The very same land where Nicholas was about to unveil his grand development project, a so-called legacy. Neither of them realized it yet, but their fates were bound not just by childhood memories, but by a conspiracy that shattered a family to build an empire. And in 3 weeks, just as Nicholas prepared to seal his future, Jessica would be ready to expose a truth that could bring the entire Weber dynasty crashing down. 3 days passed since their unexpected reunion. Nicholas had canceled meetings, delegated his schedule, and buried himself in dusty old archives. Something in his father's version of events didn't sit right, especially about the land now central to the Weber complex. At the Weber estate, Nicholas tore through his father's office until he found a locked file marked Project Aurora, the same name as the town Jessica now called home. Using a key he'd secretly duplicated years ago, he opened it and felt the blood freeze in his veins. Contracts, legal records, and one document in particular that sent a chill down his spine, a forged death certificate for Jessica's mother. He faked her death, Nicholas whispered, stunned, just to steal the land? Meanwhile, at Xavier's garage, Jessica had made up her mind. She'd kept the truth hidden long enough. I'm going to confront him, she said, placing the worn file on the workbench in front of Xavier. Everything is real. His father's signature is on every page. It's dangerous, Jessica, Xavier warned. The Webers destroyed your family once. They could do far worse now. Jessica's fingers brushed over the sapphire ring. I've got nothing left to lose. That evening, as Nicholas was driving toward the garage, a text from Jessica flashed across his phone town square. 20 minutes. Come alone. When Nicholas arrived, Aurora City's square was deserted. Under the shade of a sprawling tree eerily similar to the one from the orphanage where they'd first met, Jessica sat waiting, calm and composed. For 20 years, I've asked myself why my mother left me. She began no preamble. Why everything was ripped away from me in a single moment. Jessica, I've discovered something horrible. Nicholas interrupted, unable to hide the dread in his voice. My father forged my mother's death certificate. Jessica finished handing him a stack of brittle, time-worn papers, then threatened her if she tried to fight back. All so he could take our land, a property that holds the largest natural freshwater reserve in the region. Nicholas went pale as he scanned the documents. That signature, it was the same one he'd seen in the locked folder hours ago. Where did you get these? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. My mother gave them to Xavier before she disappeared. He kept them until I was old enough to understand. Jessica pulled out a faded photograph. This is my mother, Amelia Oliveira. Jessica said, pointing. She didn't abandon me. She was forced to disappear. In the photo stood a gentle-faced woman wearing the same sapphire ring. Behind her stretched a lush green valley now paved over with concrete steel and a building branded with the Weber logo. Tomorrow I'm going public, Jessica declared. During the groundbreaking ceremony of the new complex, Nicholas went pale. There'll be hundreds of reporters, investors, politicians. Exactly, Jessica nodded. The perfect moment to reveal that the Weber empire was built on fraud, extortion, and the destruction of families like mine. Nicholas's phone buzzed relentlessly, his father again. Fifth call in a row, he ignored it. There's one more thing, Jessica continued. I have reason to believe my mother is still alive. The revelation struck Nicholas like lightning. What where the last contact was 8 years ago. An anonymous letter, but the handwriting was hers, postmarked from a psychiatric facility in New Hope. Nicholas drew a breath, made a decision. Don't wait until tomorrow, he said, locking eyes with her gaze firm. We go now. Go where to the ceremony. My father moved it up to tonight. He's afraid the news might leak, so he kept it quiet. Only the inner circle knows. Inside a black limousine, speeding toward the new development, Nicholas laid out the plan. I have full access to security and staging. I can get you in the right moment to confront him in front of everyone. What Nicholas didn't say was this: he'd already discovered the exact location of Jessica's mother. She wasn't in any psychiatric facility, but instead hidden in a private Weber estate, kept as collateral to ensure her silence. The ceremony was a lavish affair. Politicians, CEOs, and high society gathered to celebrate the colossal complex built atop the very land that once belonged to the Oliveira family. Ernesto Weber, Nicholas's father, emerged in a designer suit, flashing a confident smile at the flashing cameras. His power, his presence felt untouchable. Nicholas, he beamed arms wide as he spotted his son. But the moment he saw Jessica at Nicholas's side, his expression darkened. What is she doing here? A special guest, Father Nicholas replied coolly. Someone with a very compelling story about this land's origins. Ernesto's face drained of color. My office. Now. Inside the luxurious suite overlooking the valley that once was Jessica's home, Ernesto stared at her with thinly veiled disdain. How much, he asked coldly. How much money will it take for you to vanish just like your mother should have? I want my mother, Jessica replied, voice steady, though her heart roared. Ernesto let out a sharp, bitter laugh. After all these years, do you really think she even remembers you? So she is alive, Nicholas said quietly while discreetly recording everything on his phone. Imprisoned. Ernesto scoffed at the word. I gave her a queen's life in exchange for a worthless piece of land. A fair deal. A deal made under duress isn't a deal. Came a voice from the doorway. Xavier stepped in firm and unflinching, and beside him stood an elderly woman, eyes identical to Jessica's, eyes that had carried decades of silent pain. Mom, Jessica choked, stepping toward the woman. Jessica, Amelia whispered, eyes shimmering with tears. Just outside Maya, the fiancé of Nicholas stood silently in the hallway recording every word, every image on her phone. The reunion between mother and daughter wasn't just about revealing the fraud behind the Weber empire, it was about exposing the bitter truth of a family destroyed by greed. Inside Ernesto Weber's grand sitting room, the air was taut with tension. Jessica and her mother, after 20 years of forced separation, finally stood face to face. The patriarch, the man who had always controlled everything, now looked like a ruler whose reign was crumbling. This can't be. Ernesto staggered back, his breath shallow. She was under constant surveillance. Money can buy silence, Ernesto, Amelia said firmly, her voice steady, strengthened by years of captivity. But it can't buy true loyalty. Some of your guards had families and hearts. Jessica trembled as she moved closer to her mother. 20 years of unanswered questions, 20 years of being left behind. When they embraced, no words were needed, only the quiet fall of tears saying everything that couldn't be spoken. Nicholas stood motionless, emotions ripping across his face. Why, Father? He finally asked, voice low. Why destroy an entire family? For a piece of land, Ernesto slowly steadied himself. That land was never just land, he replied. It held the largest freshwater reserve in the region. It's worth billions. Was the future of this company, and that justifies ruining lives. Nicholas's voice rose with anger. How do you even begin to justify that? A flicker of something dangerous sparked in Ernesto's eyes, the same way I justified adopting an orphan to replace the son I actually lost. The room fell silent. Nicholas froze as if struck in the chest. What are you saying? His face went pale, his voice barely audible. You think it was coincidence, Ernesto sneered. Why do you think you ended up at that orphanage exactly 6 months later? Your mother died giving birth to our real son. You were just a replacement, an orphan with no known illnesses, no relatives, no one to question. The revelation hit Nicholas like an avalanche. His entire life, his entire identity, a lie. He wasn't a Weber by blood. He was a nameless child rebranded and repurposed just like Jessica had been. You're lying. Maya suddenly burst into the room, cutting through the tension like a blade. In her hand was an old, worn file. This is why I always felt uneasy about our business marriage, Maya said, voice steely. I did my research. These are falsified adoption records, not just for Nicholas, but for other children too. Ernesto's face turned ashen. What have you done? Just what any future wife should do, Maya replied, eyes fierce. Investigate the man she's supposed to marry. You didn't just forge adoption documents. You were involved in a covert child trafficking network. She tossed the file onto the table papers, spilling out like evidence in a courtroom. Xavier stepped up beside Nicholas, laying a reassuring hand on his shoulder. That means, he said softly, you and Jessica weren't just childhood friends. ChatGPT Danai. Maya continued, her eyes fixed on the documents in her hand. You're actually half-siblings. Same mother, different fathers. Jessica and Nicholas stood frozen. They looked at each other and saw the truth mirrored in their identical eyes. The same shade, the same shape, and now, the same mother. That's why this ring, Amelia said, her voice breaking, means something to both of you. It's been in our family for generations. I gave it to Nicholas just before Ernesto took him away. He told you it was a gift from a mother you never knew. At that moment, the wail of police sirens rang out through the gates, growing louder by the second. Nicholas tightened his grip on the phone, still recording in his hand. It's over, he said, his voice steady at last. Every lie, every scheme, every abuse of power. The following week, the media exploded with headlines: Weber empire collapses after shocking fraud and illegal detention scandal. Real estate tycoon Ernesto Weber arrested for fraud kidnapping, document forgery, and child trafficking. Heir Nicholas Weber renounces the Weber name, reclaims true identity, Nicholas Oliveira. The entire mega development project was officially halted. The land was legally restored to the Oliveira family, and the site that once symbolized unchecked greed was transformed into a protected ecological reserve and community center serving hundreds of local families. 6 months later, at Esperanza Auto and Mechanical, now expanded and fully modernized, Jessica stood over a car engine, wiping her hands clean with a cloth. Nicholas, now director of the Oliveira Foundation for Abandoned Children, sat beside her reviewing grant applications. Still feels strange? Jessica asked, glancing at him. Nicholas gave her a genuine smile, a rare one he never used to have in his old life. Yeah, strange, he said, but also freeing. He touched the small wooden bird pin, a hand-carved gift Jessica once gave him as a child, now worn proudly as a pendant around his neck. We lost 20 years, but we got the truth back. And we got our family back. Amelia entered the workshop carrying a tray of fresh lemonade. Her eyes, once etched with sorrow, now glowed with a quiet, hard-earned joy. The ring, she said softly, noticing the sapphire still on Jessica's hand. It's always kept us connected, even when we didn't know it. Sometimes the most tangled web of lies unravels with a single thread, a ring, from mother to son to the sister he never knew he had. And sometimes empires built on injustice don't collapse because of guilt, but because truth rises quiet and undeniable when no one expects it. If this story of a buried family bond moved your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories of truth, healing, and hope. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, like the video if you believe justice can come from the smallest voices. Subscribe so you never miss more powerful and true stories like this one. Comment if you've ever stood up for someone you love, even when no one else believed you.